So step one would be to grab your best buddy in the whole wide world. Well, it's not exactly a necessity, but it helps.
This part may seem obvious, but we like to put tarps or drop cloth down to make sure we don't get any overspray in the area that we're painting.
Yeah, we tend to like to paint outside, but obviously you could do this in your garage or in your yard or really anywhere.
We like to paint our furniture in batches, usually 2 to 4 dressers or pieces at a time. Part of that has to do with the paint sprayer I use and the amount of paint it takes just to prime the line, which I'll explain later.
Yeah, so if you're just getting started, you'll probably want to start with just one dresser. You don't have to get 2 or 4. It just helps us to be efficient. And so in this case, you'll actually see us paint 4 dressers, all the same color. 2 of them have similar hardware, 2 of them have similar bases, because again, we want to maximize our time and the quality of our product. So that leads us into today's flip.
The first thing I like to do on any piece is pull all the drawers out and take off the hardware. Next step is cleaning. I like to use TSP, but really you can use any good degreaser or just something that's going to get any dirt or oil off the surface of your furniture. Because no matter how well you prime and paint, it won't stick if your piece is dirty. Hopefully by this point you've decided what kind of hardware you want on your piece. If you're keeping the original hardware, there are some different things I like to do to help either clean it up or spruce it up. First, if it's metal hardware that can be cleaned and it just needs a little bit of the tarnish removed, I like to use Barkeeper's Friend just to give the surface a good scrub. Sometimes I love the hardware, but the color is just not quite right. My favorite way to spruce up hardware like that is to use stuff called Rub and Buff. This is a lot more durable than spray painting your hardware, which can tend to flake off with use, and you can also control the amount of coverage and color that you get on each piece. For this dresser, I am doing totally different hardware that has different spacing for the holes, and so I am filling the old hardware holes with a wood putty. Here you can see I am slightly overfilling the holes, and while you wouldn't do this in most cases of filling holes, I've found that if I want to keep this a one-step thing, I slightly overfill. That way when I sand, you don't see any indentation where the holes were. Next, I sand down all of the wood filler that I just applied with 150 grit sandpaper, and go ahead and give the rest of the piece of furniture a little sanding too, just to give a little extra grit for the primer to hold on to. Then wipe everything off with a damp rag just to make sure there's no dust left from sanding. Next step is priming. I use Zinsser's shellac-based primer, and it is my absolute favorite. I have used them all, the water-based, oil-based, and this one just bonds better than anything. One more note about priming. It is not just for bonding, but it also blocks stains. And so even if you are using a paint that doesn't necessarily need a bonding primer, say a white chalk paint, you still want a primer there to keep the wood tannins from later bleeding through on your lighter colored paint. I like to roll my primer on with a 6-inch foam roller, and because this primer is not water-based and is a pain to clean up, I usually just throw away my roller when I'm done. Here I'm showing you how not to do this, because really you should tape off your drawers before you start priming. I like to use painter's tape with either 12 or 18-inch painter's paper to wrap my drawers. Next comes the fun part, the painting. Now, if you're watching this and you're just getting started out, I don't want you to feel discouraged and feel like you have to have an expensive paint sprayer to be able to do this, because really you can get a great finish if you're using a high quality brush. I have gotten a lot of questions about what kind of paint sprayer I'm using. This is an airless paint sprayer from Harbor Freight. And while my particular model is no longer carried, they do carry a similar option, and other brands have them as well. Now, I wouldn't actually recommend getting this kind of paint sprayer just for flipping furniture. We have this from previous home renovation projects, things like painting the entire exterior of a house, all of the interior doors, all of the woodwork, kitchen cabinets, and it's great for large projects like that. But for something like this, it does take a lot of paint just to be able to prime your line, and there are some other options that are just as good, such as the different kinds of HVLP guns. The key is light, even strokes so you can avoid getting drips. Once the first coat dries, I do a light sand with 220 grit sandpaper and then wipe off the dust. After that, I apply a second coat using the same light, even strokes. Once that coat dries, I do another light sand with a 220 grit sandpaper again, and it's time for the top coat. Here I'm using Minwax's water-based polyacrylic and a matte finish. And I found with the darker colors that it can sometimes look cloudy even once it's dried, and if I mix just a small amount of my paint in with the top coat, that solves that problem. Next up for this dresser is a custom wood base, which is totally optional and maybe a little advanced if you haven't used power tools before. Another option if you want to add legs is to buy pre-made legs from Amazon or somewhere like that. I make my bases out of red oak 1x3s and 2x2s. I make the new base just a little bit smaller than the width of my furniture and use a Craig jig to make pocket holes to put everything together. Next, I stain the base, and I usually use Minwax's Golden Oak or Provincial, but there are of course several stain options out there and a lot of them look great. My favorite product to use when sealing stained pieces is Minwax's Wipe-On Polyurethane. Since I built a new base, I'm going to have to remove these old legs, and thankfully this one was really easy to remove and just required removing a couple of screws.
Give me a kiss.
Next, it's time for hardware. I used a simple cabinet hardware template to make sure I got my holes perfectly spaced and then attached the new hardware. Next, I used my previously made pocket holes to attach the base to the dresser. And with that, it's finished and it's ready for staging and photos. Now, normally we stage our dressers with just a little bit of decor, and if you've watched our previous videos, you know that we had a dresser that looked very similar to this one, so we decided to do a little experiment. We staged one and we didn't stage the other. We listed them both at the same time for similar prices, and the staged one immediately got at least 10 times the amount of interest as the other one. So after a little while, we decided to stage this one too, take new pictures, list it again, and soon after we had a buyer. So we found this dresser on Facebook Marketplace and bought it for $25. We put about $65 in materials. That puts us at a total of $90 for our cost. We ended up selling this dresser for $650, making a profit of $560, or approximately 16 Chick-fil-A meals for our family.
Yes, that's right. So a lot of you have been asking, well, how do you sell dressers for this much? What can I expect to make? And so I just want to let Andrea talk a little bit about how we started.
Yeah, so I actually sold my first dresser for $200, and I was so excited. And so from there, we just grew our skill. We came up with more ideas. I thought of the wood base idea, which really added a unique element that nobody else was doing, and we just kept pushing the price up, and we were still getting a lot of interest, and people were really excited. I will add in there too that there is still an element of the right person coming at the right time, because we still have a piece here and there that I think is like a really great piece, and we end up having to lower the price, and it is what it is. So we sell it, we make a profit, we're still happy with it in the end.